Okay, we are recording. Rob, how are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. So I asked where you was today because you're in like a kind of weird looking warehouse type setup. So band practice?
Y- Yes, yeah. So we are literally in a warehouse, but it's where we're rehearsing at the minute. It's good because we've got thousands of boxes all around us, so it works nicely as a kind of soundproofing, so we
Absolutely.
don't upset people too much.
Love it. Love it. Um, Rob, I'm going to kick things off with the obvious question to start any playlist. And I want you to tell me the song, please, that you regard as having the greatest ever intro.
Well, for me, it's got to be "Atmosphere" by Joy Division.
Mm.
Um, I mean, as the name of the song suggests, it's just so atmospheric. And when those drums come in, do 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 do, and it's got that slow, warm kind of bass to it, and that beautiful building rhythm, and then it kicks in, and it kind of it's very very emotional, and it sets the scene so well. I love it. Every time you hear it come in, you just little tingle down the back of your spine of joy and warmth and happiness, and but kind of I don't know. It's a weird sort of nostalgic, longing kind of happiness,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. I love it.
And it's impossible to not feel the kind of, in retrospect, looking back at it now and listening to it not to attach it to Ian Curtis, obviously, and the stuff happening when you watch the video to atmosphere that Anton Corbin produced. It's just so dark and
Mm,
but then as you say, there's a joy to it as well, and it is that for me, it's that little payoff when the synth comes in at the beginning
yeah,
after the drums. You just get that big wave of synth comes in. Oh, it's fucking great, man.
it's just magnificent. Yeah, I love it.
Wonderful. Right. Well, look, I'm going to ask you about intros, and if we look at Shikari as an example, when you first started making music, the way that your fans would get your music would be way different to how they get it now. There's like streaming is everywhere now, obviously, and you see with labels putting emphasis on getting on whatever sort of Spotify playlist there is, or the benefits of TikTok and things like that, which is crazy in one respect, but it works in others. And so I'm always intrigued to know that when the creative process is happening for the band, does any of
Mm.
that kind of stuff filter through into your process?
Was specifically for our intros.
Yeah, let's start with intros, but I guess in songs in general.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, more so when we're thinking about radios, because like for any single that we have, we always have to think about radio edit, and with the radio edit, you always need to get to like the vocal part needs to come in soon. So if we start a song with just like a big heavy instrumental part, when it comes to the radio edit, you have to basically cut that down in half, if not cut it out altogether and go straight
Yeah,
into the vocal, because you want the radio listeners apparently want that sort of instant hook,
yeah,
that vocal part to get their ears wrapped around. Um, yeah, I mean, we used our songwriting has definitely changed over the years, and you can see, like, we used to do much longer songs. We used to go all over the place. We'd play the chorus maybe once or twice if you're lucky, and then we go
yeah.
on to something different. But now I would imagine that sort of a lot more well-rounded. The way they flow and sort of keeping them sort of short and tight. People have very short attention spans these days. Sort of long form of anything is seems to be
Yeah.
dying out. So it needs to. I don't know how long it's going to get until we're actually just doing sort of 10-second jingles
Yeah.
and an album of 10-second
Do you
jingles,
know
and
what?
that's
You
it. Kind of
laugh,
thing.
but like, is that a possibility at some point that bands are going to end up doing that? Because I mentioned to you before we press record that that I'm a DJ and a promoter. I know that you guys go and DJ and such, but I've noticed post lockdown that the next generation of kids that kind of missed that two important years of turning 18 and going to clubs and kind of, I'm now finding that when, as I'm saying, I'm thinking, is it just that I'm playing shit records? I don't know. But as I'm playing, as I play a track and generally a track that everybody knows, you get that moment of like, oh, great, yeah, and then on the dance floor. But I find that literally after 30, 40 seconds now,
People are bored.
People are bored and are reaching for their
Yeah.
phones or like filming themselves on the dance floor. And it's like, wow, like that's crazy.
Yeah.
And is that just because of that sort of almost that TikTok time scale of like, well, we've only got like a few seconds and I want the next thing. And that
Yeah,
worries me
I totally agree. When we're doing our DJ sets and you'll play like one build up and one drop of a song, and if you've been going on, if you're reaching like the 2 minute marker, you think, oh shit, I'm gonna lose the crowd here. I need to
which is madness.
Load up the next track. Yeah, if you think back like of the days of the like 90s Ibiza trance kind of thing, a track would be going for like 12, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And like it would be a full epic going through every kind of emotion until you start slowly bringing in the next track.
Absolutely.
But I don't know, maybe people don't sort of lose themselves to the music nowadays like they used to, or
I don't know. I'm sure they do.
yeah.
I'm sure they do. I hope they do.
Yeah.
You touched
But
on
I mean,
emotion. Sorry.
to be able to go back to your point of whether our songs are going to end up being sort of 10-second jingles or not, I would struggle to imagine one of our songs without the chorus being repeated at least twice. So, although saying that, we have done a song that's like a minute and a half, which is just basically through composed and doesn't go back to the same thing twice. Huh. To know that I'm sort of faulting my own argument there.
I'm going to take you back for track 2 and ask you, please, to tell me the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Okay, yeah. Well, this one I wrote was War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
My dad's had the record of it, and I remember listening to it with the headphone. I had to listen to it with the headphones on because it would scare my older brother and sister because it is quite scary. Like not just the story of it, but the music in it and the weird noises and those sort of alien woo 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 noises are quite so spooky, and it's a scary album particularly for a kid.
And the album artwork's terrifying, Rob.
And the album artwork, yeah, you got these big robotic Martians coming and zapping, exploding up battleships and so on. But I think I don't know, it excited me. That's why I loved it, and it was crazy. It was this other world that I hadn't, it was the first time I'd sort of getting into kind of sci-fi as a genre. And it was a lot later that I read the book and got into H.G. Wells and his writing. But the musical version of it, I remember just sitting at home listening to with headphones on. I'd listen to it over and over again. I don't know, I must have been maybe 6 years old or something. And
that's heavy stuff for a 6-year-old, isn't it?
Well, I guess so. Yeah, I also remember some of the first sort of rock music I ever got into was listening to my dad's cassettes or my dad's friends' cassettes of the Doors.
Yeah.
And like as under 10, it's not your average kind of I don't know, happy-go-lucky pop music that most other kids, I suppose, would be listening to. I was already getting into the dark, emotional period.
That's crackers. Most of your mates are going to be dancing around to Bewitched, and you're 12 minutes into the end by the Doors. That's like...
yeah, pretty much.
Where was growing up, Rob?
St Albans, Hertfordshire. Nice.
Fond memories?
I love it. Well, so much so that I'm still there all these years later. I couldn't move too far from home.
Yeah.
It's I think because we travel so much as a band, it's nice to keep going back to somewhere so familiar.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends, because we're just on the outskirts of London, lots of my friends moved into London for that, the energy, the excitement, and what have you. but I had so much energy and excitement in my work on tour that I like going back to somewhere a bit more peaceful and calm and quiet. And I love it because you got London on your doorstep. So if I want to go in and have the loud, busy, ruckus of central London, is 20 minutes on a train and I'm there. So I do love it.
That's
But
that's
I do know just how privileged I am to have grown up there. That never escapes me.
yeah. It's so weird what you've just said there. That's the reason I set this podcast up. Everything you just said there is the reason I set this up, was because I was having a conversation with a mutual friend of ours, Scroobius Pip, about the fact that we live just outside of London in Essex, and he said he'd done some press for something, and people were like, "You don't live in London?" And he's like, "No." And at the time, there was lots of Essex bands like the Horrors and These New Purians that had all moved to London, and it was like, "Why haven't you moved to London?" And he's like, "Well, quite like where I live. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to move to London." And so I was always intrigued, and I set this up to initially start by doing it sort of geographically and asking like bands from outside of London, about their hometown and where there's a scene that was there, and it's merged into what it's become now. But just that pressure, if you live outside of Manchester or you live outside of London, to move there, because that's where it's at. That's, if you want
That's
to
where
have
the action
success
is.
in music, that's where you've got to go, or film or whatever. You've got to go to London to make it happen. And I'm always intrigued when people go, "I don't really want to." And
Yeah.
so yeah, it was interesting to hear you say
Yeah.
exactly
Well,
what you said.
my brother's the opposite. So he's moved into London. I always have conversations with him about this. He says he loves living in the thick of it, being in the action, but then being able to come just outside for his relaxing, weekend breaks or whatever,
Yeah,
to get away from it. But then he loves living in the thick of it. Whereas I think to know I like I don't know, because I was about to say I like a slower pace of life, but then the career that I've got is not a very slow paced life. So yeah, I think it is just that sort of quiet homestead, homely, comforting space to go back to.
absolutely. Tell me about the song that reminds you of your time at school.
Oh, what did I go for? Oh yeah, of course. Well, Skunk and Nancy. Um, for me, it was difficult, this one, because there were two albums that got me through school. It was Stoosh by Skunk and Nancy and Fat of the Land by The Prodigy.
Mm.
So it was a toss up between them, to be honest. But I think Skunk and Nancy took it for me. I can't remember where I was or what was. I think I was on it. I was a Boy Scout as a kid, and I think it must have been like a scout camp that or something that one of the other kids had a cassette tape or a CD of it or something, and just the energy and the anger and the power of it, and that the it was before I'd really got into sort of before I'd been at all politicized. I just thought the way the world works is the way the world works, and
Sure.
didn't really think much of it. And then I heard that song, yes, it's fucking political. Everything's political. And it's just, the raw energy and power of it. And just, especially when you're, I don't know, if the teacher's pissing you off or something, you just want to kick over the desks and throw your chair through the window and chuck all your books out, kind of thing. It's that kind of energy that I just absolutely loved, matched with the more emotional ones on that record as well, that really got me by the heartstrings.
Yeah, yeah,
So
they
it's a
really do
powerful
that.
record.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Have you ever heard? I've got it. I got sent it, and I've never heard it played out. But there's a version that they released of Brazen, and it's just got Planet Rock behind it. And I'll tell you what, if you've never heard it, it's absolutely amazing. It's such a tune. Um, and yeah, I mean, you've just mentioned two bands there. Obviously, being an Essex boy, we're fiercely proud of the Prodigy. And if you look at Keith and you look at Skin, arguably the two of the most iconic front people of that generation, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was, maybe that had something to do with it. Like seeing his sort of face with his dark eyes and his the two sort of razor hair thing he had going on, and just sort of raw energy, and then her face on the front of the album, like screaming at the camera lens, down the lens. I'd never really sort of thought of why that they sort of stood out to me so much, but maybe that had so much to do with when so many other school kids around me were listening to their cheesy pop-tastic bright colors tunes, and there was me just sort of wanting to, I don't know, kick them all in the balls and run around screaming in everyone's face or something. That's kind of my character, and seeing that character in these bands that I looked up to was sort of, maybe that's something that really sort of struck me and stood out to me. We've been lucky enough to meet Skin a couple of times, and she's just so lovely, like really, really amazing person. And then again with the Prodigy, we were very, very lucky to get a tour with them quite a few years back around Europe. It was just as we had started really getting some success for ourselves. And I remember my manager calling me saying, we've got this European headline tour booked, but we might have to cancel it to go on tour with the Prodigy instead. Is that all right with you? And I had to get him to repeat it 3 times, because it was literally a dream tour for me. So as a kid, to look up to these bands and then actually get into the industry and not only meet them but then end up touring with them as well, and sort of them becoming my peers, I suppose, is just sort of, I still have to kind of pinch myself to think about it.
Wonderful. Did you know what you wanted to be when you was at school?
I thought I was going to be a film director.
Okay.
When I was in primary school, I thought I was going to be, there's no doubt about it, I was going to be in the NBA. I was going to be a basketballer. That dream was quickly crushed when I joined the school basketball team, and was benched pretty hard, pretty quickly. But then, I always loved film and photography. My older brother was always really into film, so we'd watch a lot of films together. Funnily enough, like, music was more of a hobby to me. It was like a secondary hobby. I hated music at school. I dropped the subject as quickly as I could because I found it so dull. It didn't interest me at all. And it was outside of school that I loved the band, and it was more about the kind of the being part of the little team, the camaraderie, being the gang that went off and did something on our own, away from away from school and sort of all the other systems or whatever. We were sort of breaking out, being our own, making our own way kind of thing. And that's what really got me about being in the band. I'm so sure so many people say, God, I wish I'd listened more at school. The amount of times you hear people say, oh, I wish I'd. It's true. There's so many things that I don't know now. I'm like, well, I'm sure I was taught that at some point in school. I should have fucking listened to the teachers. They were teaching me useful stuff, but oh well, it's too late now. And like, I don't know if maybe it was the teacher wasn't right. He was a nice enough guy, but it's just a bit boring. Like, it was really dull, and it was kind of trying to learn scales and stuff, and it was bored me to tears. It's only now later in life that I'm finding more of a love for this kind of stuff and the theory behind music, and like all the other subjects that I would have learned at school. Now I'm getting more of appreciation for the sciences and sort of literature and stuff, which I hated at school.
But I think at that age, you've got energy, haven't you? Like endless amounts of energy. And I think, why would you want to be learning scales when you can be rehearsing, you can be making music with your mates, you can be having fun doing that. And I think, as you say,
exactly. Why would I want to be looking at these little drawings, lines on a black and white piece of paper when I could be smashing the tubs and making a big noise, making a big ruckus. That's so much more fun. What I think about is like when I was a kid and I was in school in a classroom, having to write, getting cramp in my hand because I'm having to write for hours when all I'm doing is looking outside the window at the field, thinking I want to be out there playing, running around. So, yeah, so I think I wish I'd gone to school a few years later, you know.
Yeah.
There you go.
Tell me about the first song you remember buying from a record shop.
Oh, I'm gonna have to remind my. Oh yeah, the Fugees, the score. So again, my brother and I shared a love for film, but also a love for music, and we put our money together and bought the score. And I remember, I think maybe it was the first time I had heard music. Well, other than there's a few swear words in the Doors when I was a young kid. I remember my parents being unsure whether they should let me listen to it or not. But like going out and buying our own record and it being full of swear, like, you know, horrendous language, as my mother would have said, it was really exciting. And sort of listen to these people talk about things that I had never experienced. You know, I grew up in white middle class St Albans, sort of quite privileged, and then sort of hearing what they're talking about, growing up in the tough streets, as young black people in America, that is a world that I had no idea about, and sort of really grasped me, and I love to lose myself in the music and the stories and what they were talking about. But one time I lost that record because I was listening to it without the headphones on, and my dad walked past the bedroom and heard it and heard the language on it, and he said, "Absolutely not. I'm not. I'm not having you listening to that kind of language," because he hated all the swearing in it. So he took it off us, and he said, "I'll instead I'll buy you and your brother a different thing, you know, that cost the same amount of like a different records." And so we got an album called The Tarantino Connection, which was a bunch of songs that are in Tarantino's movies.
Yeah.
Instead, and that was, I mean, I enjoyed that album as well. But
yeah, I'm gonna say there'd be some bangers on there.
Yeah, no, absolutely, there was some great music on there as well. But it didn't stop me from going back and listening to the Fugees. Obviously, if anything, it probably made me love it even more just to rebel against them.
Love it, love it. I mean, was home musical growing up?
Yeah, quite. So my parents loved music, and my dad had a massive record collection. That's where I sort of got a lot of my love for. Started my love for things like Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and the Who and the old like 60s, 70s classics, classic rock bands. My older sister played the piano. My older brother played guitar. And basically, when I was 7, my parents said, "Tell us what instrument you'd like to learn, and we'll pay for you to get lessons." So I thought of the loudest and most annoying instrument there was, because I think it matched my own energy at the time of being loud and annoying. Yeah, so I started getting lessons at 7.
Yeah.
My parents didn't play any instruments themselves, but they were happy to have me, to pay for me to get a musical education.
Okay. Well, I'm going to look forwards now. Do you know what? Actually, I want to ask you something. From having all that energy at school, and then finding yourself on these stages with, you know, you've mentioned like, you know, gigging with like your heroes like the Prodigy and things like that, and then obviously the success that Shikari's had is remarkable and amazing. And would you and obviously I've seen you DJ and I've seen you play, and there's for somebody in a crowd looking at you, you don't seem to lack confidence. Are you confident? And if so, where do you think it comes from?
I am confident. And I think well, I'm confident on stage, certainly. And I think it comes from just playing thousands and thousands of gigs. Like something's only scary until you do it a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
Um, it's yeah, just I've sort of been learning a lot recently that the whole kind of face your fears thing. It's so easy to not do something that scares you, but then the more you the push yourself out and do that very thing, the less scary it seems,
Have
and
you
the
got an
more
example of that?
um well, I suppose interviews. This
Yeah.
I was always really scared of interviews because what if I come across as an idiot, or what if I say the wrong thing, or
Yeah.
what if they ask me something that I don't know the answer to? And then you realize actually it's okay because they just want to know about me, and they're only going to ask questions that I have an answer to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't ask them. So it's sort of, and yeah, so the more I do, the more relaxed and comfortable I become with them. And
Yeah.
then finally, in turn, the more relaxed and comfortable my answers become.
Yeah.
And similarly on stage, the more relaxed I am on stage, and the more I just sort of uh, take a deep breath and breathe and relax my arms and stuff, the better I play.
Yeah.
It's when you're really nervous that I either sort of trip up over my words in an interview, or
Yeah.
I hold the grip the sticks really hard on stage, and I play so much worse, and I'm really tight, and I'm always sort of trying to chase myself in my playing, and then I'll start tripping up over myself, and then if I fuck up once, oh, that's it. Then I'll never be able to bring it back, and then I'll just
Yeah.
fuck up again and again. Um, so yeah, like it's pushing myself out, pushing oneself out of their comfort zone is what I've discovered to be a really, really important part of developing yourself as a person.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
Teaching is another thing. I love wanted, really wanted to get into teaching, and I put on some drum lessons, like some group drum sessions in St Albans last summer. And honestly, before the first session, I was shitting myself. I was like, my stomach was felt so tight. I felt nauseous. Felt sick. My head was spinning. I was like, what if no one turns up? What if 100 people turn up? What if it doesn't look like I know what I'm doing? What if I don't know? What if they're better than me? Like all these things are going through my head, and then they turned up. We had the first session. It was great. I was like, okay. And then we did the second one. I was still nervous,
Yeah.
but not quite as bad. The second one went well as well, and then the third one and fourth one. And by the end of it, I was like, this is easy. What was I worried about?
Yeah.
And now I can do it, and I love doing it. I was looking forward to the sessions, not just sort of stressing and worrying about them. It's kind of getting yourself over that first hump that is the most difficult part, but the most important.
Absolutely. Rob, let's go clubbing. Tell me the song that soundtracked your years clubbing.
Well, it's got to be Underworld. I've been a massive fan of Underworld since I was a kid, and it might have been hearing Born Slippy on Train Spotting that
Also,
first
one of
did
the
it.
greatest intros ever as well.
Well, this song could have worked for two of my answers, I suppose. Yeah. Um, yeah. And just the euphoria of it. Um, and then coming in with those slamming drums. I mean, I'm a drummer. I love all the percussions and that. It's almost like a churning train or something. Just that rolling, thudding drums that kind of
He
you
wrote it
can
on a
just.
train, didn't he?
Did he?
He wrote it on a train, yeah. So
Yeah.
a lot of it is about the journey from, again, Essex boys, Romford to wherever, and it was written on a train. And so, yeah, whether that's filtered
Yeah.
its way through into the sonics of it, but yeah, it was written on a
No
train.
way.
Yeah, that's quite fucking surreal. You just said
Well, there you go. I didn't even know that. I
that.
just learned something new. You know what? I'm actually gonna go see them on Monday the 20th. They're playing at the Royal Albert Hall
Amazing.
um, for a charity show. So I cannot wait for that. I went and saw them play at Ziget Festival in Hungary when I was 18, me and Rory, we went traveling around Eastern Europe, and we stopped off in Hungary, and we didn't even know the festival was happening. Turns out it was like, a massive festival on this little island in the middle of the Danube River. So we went, and the first night it was Basement Jaxx, and the second night it was Underworld, who I'd been listening to loads at that point. And I do remember one point in the night, I was just jumping up and down, raving so hard. I can't remember what they were playing, 8-Ball or something. But I was just absolutely loving it. And then someone came up to me and said something, I think in Hungarian or a different language. I was like, "Sorry, do you speak English?" He said, "Oh, where can I find the pills? Where did you get your pills?" I was like, "I'm not on pills. I just love this group. I'm just high on life, man." I think I'd had maybe 2 beers and a half a spliff by that point. But other than that, I just absolutely love the group and can't wait to see them again.
Wonderful. I love the fact he just looked at you and thought, I need some of what that guy's on. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh, wonderful. Right, let's take you home. And I'm going to ask you, please, to tell me a favourite song from your home county, please.
Well, there are loads of good bands from our home county. There's Sixth, who we know very well. We knew their music before we actually ever got to know them, but then their guitarist, Dan Wellars, ended up working with us on many of our records. And they're great people, amazing band. I remember watching them. They were played at Lee, I think, was it Leeds Festival, and they said "Hello Reading" when they came out, and they got the biggest boo you've ever heard. It was brilliant. But yeah, and then Dan's a lovely guy. And there's Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes. Frank, that we go way back with to the days of Gallows. And we actually, we played a lot of the same venues, toured the same circuit. And now Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes, we're seeing quite often, sharing festival stages together, and have subsequently got to know the rest of his band, who are all really excellent guys and making great music. But the band that I chose was the Zombies, who are another St Albans band from way back in the 60s. And I mentioned before about the drumming class that I did. Now, Steve Rodford, who's the current drummer, who his dad was the original bassist, we somehow met up, I suppose, two St Albans bands, both loved the St Albans football team. So we met up there, and I got chatting with him, and he's such a fantastic guy. And I was told him about this project, and he said he would love to be involved. So one of the sessions he came along, and we were doing it at the Pioneer Club, and we played through the PA his song, Time of the Season. And we had the whole group, there was about 25 of us, playing the drum part, like this really nice syncopated part. And we had sort of, half the people or quarter of the people doing the kick drum, quarter doing the snare, quarter doing a hi-hat, and then everyone doing that noise. And it just worked so well. It was such a joy to have him there. And he was such a lovely guy. And it was great to sort of get chatting with him and see the different style of touring that they do to us. Because he said they'd just gone on to do one of those cruises, like around the Bahamas or something. They play a couple of times and then just enjoy themselves on this cruise around the Bahamas. I thought that's fucking awesome. I wish we could do that. Man. Yeah, that's a pretty sweet deal. I want to get myself onto one of those cruises.
Love it. And let's also talk about what a tune that is. It's insane.
That was brilliant. Right? It's just iconic. And funnily enough, last night my wife and I were watching a TV show. Was it What We Do in the Shadows? Have you seen that about the vampires? and suddenly it came on there. I was like, no way. How serendipitous. We were
Yeah,
just, my wife was helping me choose the tracks for this podcast. And so we had just been listening to that track over and
amazing.
over. And they've actually just released some new songs, and they got a new album coming out soon.
Yeah,
And the new stuff's really good too.
wonderful, wonderful. I tell you what, I think if my memory serves me well, because it was about 2 years ago when Raoul done this, I think he chose that as well.
Really?
I think he did.
No
And I'll
way.
tell you who else. I think, am I right in saying, are the subways from St Albans Way?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think we were going to have a battle of the bands with them
Yeah.
one year, like years and years ago, and then they pulled out because they got a record deal, and then went on to make it to hit the big time.
Yeah. And I'm sure Billy chose that as well. Like
Yeah,
it's earned its place in St Albans because anyone that's from there has shouted about how good that tune is, and rightly so. Rightly so.
it is a
Right.
classic. I've also
Robin.
got to shout out our St Albans guys, the Trash Boat.
Yes.
Yeah, they're from St Albans. And then we got Friendly Fires, who I think just from Harpenden, just up the road
Yeah.
from us. So there's plenty of good bands coming out of Hertfordshire.
Love it. Love it. Last track, and I'm going to ask you to be a tastemaker, or as the kids call it, influencer now, Rob. Tell me a song that you think many of the listeners of this podcast may not know, but you would like them to hear.
Well, the wording of that one confused me for a little bit. First of all, I
Okay.
thought it was like people might think that I didn't want them to hear. So I was thinking, what, like a guilty pleasure thing? But
It can work like that, or just a song that you just think people should check out.
all right. Well, that's what. Yeah, I reread it a few times. I was like, no, it definitely means one that people don't know that I want them to hear. Okay, here's one that I want everyone to hear. Is "Oh Baby" by LCD Sound System.
Oh, what a band.
I remember. I'm sure it came out. I was at home, so it only came out a few years ago. I can't remember if it was the summertime because I was sitting in my garden. I don't know if it was during lockdown. It might have been. And I just absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And it just thought it. I mean, it's quite a long song. It goes on, but it never gets boring, and it's just got that nice kind of, again, warm, smooth, happy feeling to it, and it kind of makes me joyful. I love listening to it, and it'll always remind me of sitting in my garden. I think I was drinking a cold beer and just sitting in the sunshine and had nothing else in the world to do other than. That's why I think maybe it was in lockdown, because
Yeah.
I didn't have anything else to do,
Yeah.
or maybe I was just, I don't know, enjoying my Sunday afternoon or something. Yeah.
Oh, it's a wonderful track. It's a wonderful track. We make it really easy for people to go and find that, because we put together a little Spotify playlist to accompany the podcast with all of your tracks on there. And
Oh,
obviously
perfect.
we'll put some Shikari on there as well. So with that in mind, what's happening? What's coming up?
Well, we've literally just yesterday released our third single from our upcoming album. It's called Bloodshot.
Mm-hmm.
The album is called A Kiss for the Whole World. We're currently, well, I'd say in the rehearsal studio, but it's in this the rehearsal factory, you could say. About to go away on our second leg of our small cluster of shows that we're doing around the UK, sort of in the build up towards the album. Yeah, and then it's going to be a busy summer of festivals.
Wonderful.
We're headlining Slam Dunk festivals, so that's the first one to come up.
Amazing.
Wow, it's going to be really good.
Wonderful. Well, we'll put links to the Shikari website and socials and stuff in the show notes to this, so people can go and follow and keep up to speed with everything that's happening. Rob, it's been a real delight chatting records with you, mate. Thank you so much for giving up your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I'm going to press stop. Don't go anywhere.